और हम बात कर रहे हैं एनडीटीवी वर्ल्ड समिट की। आज एनडीटीवी वर्ल्ड समिट 2024 के पहले दिन प्रधानमंत्री ने एनडीटीवी वर्ल्ड को लॉन्च किया। 2 दिन के इस आयोजन के पहले दिन सबका ध्यान प्रधानमंत्री और विदेश मंत्री एस जयशंकर के बयानों पर रहा, लेकिन इस आयोजन में कई और अहम विषय भी छाए रहे और कई बड़े वक्ताओं ने शिरकत की। आइए सुनते हैं इन अहम वक्ताओं ने आज क्या कुछ खास बातें की।
What do you see as this possible reset? I remember in 2015 you talked about India at the UN Security Council. What do you see as the key elements of this reset, with India taking a much more prominent role?
Well, first of all, we do need reform of the United Nations Security Council. It should have, and I made this argument, I think, as far back as 2005. When I became leader of the Conservative Party, India was the first country I visited outside Europe. When I became Prime Minister in 2010, India was the first country I visited outside Europe. I like to think that I was an early believer in the Indian century, and it's great to be back here today. And obviously, a permanent seat on the UN Security Council is something that should be India's right in this changed world. But I think we should be clear that although we need these institutions to be changed and we need them to reflect global realities, that debate will inevitably take a long time, and we shouldn't wait for that. And that's why it's so good to see India take its place in more informal global institutions like the Quad. I think that's a great move for India. India's role in the G20. The fact now that the G7 regularly invites India to attend almost as a standing member of the G7 as a fellow democracy. These are all good moves because we need India's perspective on these challenges we face in our world. And perhaps the biggest is this issue of climate change. And you can really see here in India the massive investment in green technology and in carbon reduction, badly needed here in India, but also needed across the world. So that's the sort of reset we need. But obviously it goes much broader than that, because as we speak today, we've got a world of terrible conflict. We've got the war in the Middle East. We've got the situation between Russia and Ukraine, where Prime Minister Modi quite rightly made a visit to Ukraine recently. And we need to try and re-establish some norms of behavior. And I think Ukraine is perhaps the most critical one, because certainly in my political lifetime, I can't think of a clearer example of one country invading another independent sovereign country with absolutely no excuse or justification.
Prime Minister Modi actually going to be in Russia now for the BRICS summit. He visited Ukraine as well. Do you see that India, actually more than any other country, has the credibility, the trust on both sides to actually play a mediator in finding a solution?
Well, it certainly has the credibility, and if there's a role that can be played to bring this conflict to an end, that would be welcome. But it must be done in a way that recognizes Ukraine's sovereignty and independence. And I think one of the things we need in this global reset is to get back to some clear norms. This country has suffered terribly from terrorism, so has my own country. We need to have an understanding that there aren't good terrorists and bad terrorists. Terrorism is wrong, particularly in a democratic state. We need to get back to the understanding that a country's borders are or should be inviolable, that the most important thing is the independence and sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries. And that's why I think we need this clarity. Russia's invasion was unjustified, illegal, and it breached the independence of a member of the United Nations. We need to get back to that sort of clarity.
Yes,
now, I know in the West we often are accused of double standards, and we've made mistakes in the past, no doubt about that, obviously referring to Iraq. But nonetheless, two wrongs don't make a right. It's time to try and re-establish the importance of these norms.
That's interesting, because India has also, of course, said that the West's double standards sometimes extend to the fact that we look at what's happening on our borders, and the China issue as well, and often then what we see, the perhaps double standards coming from Canada too.
Well, that's why I make the point that I don't want to in any way say to India what India's national interest is. That's for you to determine. But it would seem to me that the importance of borders, the importance of territorial integrity, matters hugely to this country as it matters to every country in the world. So when you see the most grotesque violation of a country's borders, as you have with Ukraine. I think we all need to stand together and say to Russia that what has happened is wrong. As you say, India might well be in a position to try and provide some mediation, but it must, in my view, be mediation based on the fact that Putin cannot be allowed to take territory by force and be rewarded by that, because we know from our history, if you reward people taking territory by force, they come back and take some more.
If you ask the companies in Silicon Valley, they'll say, where is the lost opportunity? We've become the 4 or 5 most powerful companies in the world. The companies who have for the last 15 years dominated the US stock markets, never happened before. And so no signs of slowing.
Okay, well, let me give you my, the conversation I have back and forth with them. When I said before that, look, historically, one of the signs of the dramatic improvements in standards of living is steadily increasing life expectancy across countries, across time. And so then I talk to the Silicon Valley types and say, you know, life expectancy has stopped increasing in the United States. It's actually falling. And then they say, oh, well, no, we don't want to use that measure anymore for progress. We want to use something else. And I'm saying, no, if that's the measure that we picked in the beginning, you got to stick with it. And by that measure, something's really gone wrong in the United States. People are not living as long as they did before. So how can it be that we've had a technological revolution and people aren't living as long? It's because that technology has not been used to improve the quality of life. And then you see what Aadhaar has done by not just making it easy for people in this room to make digital payments, but taking hundreds of millions of people who had no existence in the formal state. They had no document, no birth certificate, no driver's license, no official document of any kind. They didn't exist in the eyes of the modern state. Aadhaar made them real, gave them existence by giving them a number. And then all kinds of things have been built on top of that. So there's the direct benefit transfer schemes, access to financial accounts. But this was because this country decided we are going to use the technological opportunities here to benefit everyone. And I guarantee you life expectancy hasn't started falling in India.
It happened here because it came in from the top. You had Prime Minister Modi, when he came in 2014, adopt Aadhaar, which had been around even before he came, but he chose that, I mean, he stuck with it and used it for what, and we've seen the, what's happened now. So are you saying that government should be playing a larger role?
Yeah, absolutely.
Than just policy making and technology?
I'm saying that, and I think economists have done a huge disservice to the world by just repeating mindless assertions about the government is the problem and the market is the solution. That's just not true.
The topic of the summit is India's century. And how do you think, going forward from here, Prime Minister Modi's historic third innings, how do you think, we take off from here, and how do we shape or influence the events that are happening world over? Not only as our own footprint of India's century, but as the Prime Minister said, that world's progressive, peaceful century.
The world needs India. And I'm very happy that you've identified this century as India's century. You asked me about Prime Minister Modi and his historic third term. Why do you call it India's century? For many reasons. India has the largest population now in the world, 1.45 billion. It's growing. It's projected to reach something like 1.6 billion.
That's right.
India has a booming economy. It's crossed $3 trillion US. It should have crossed $5 trillion US had it not been for COVID. India has the biggest consumer base. India has almost 35 million successful people in the diaspora throughout the world, particularly in the advanced countries. By every measure, yes, this is India's century. But by one measure, you stand out, and that is leadership. India's leadership. And trust in that leadership. Not just Indians trusting India's leadership, but the global South especially trusting India's leadership. You choose the team, the India century, because of Prime Minister Modi's third term, historic win. Now you know that the last 10 years, the previous 2 terms will be leveraged as a springboard to take India forward into her century. But the rest of the world too. The global South looks to India for leadership, trusts in India's leadership. As a matter of fact, if there's anybody, any country that can sort out today's problems, it is India. Economic problems. The world looks to India as a market. The COVID pandemic, the world looked to India for vaccines and medicine. Even Russia and Ukraine. If there's any person who can sort it out, I do believe it is Prime Minister Modi. And therefore, India's century. And the main ingredient of your team, I do believe, is leadership across the board, including a diaspora, but especially that of Prime Minister Modi.
And when you talk about the leadership of the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister, of course, has very assiduously championed the causes of Global South on various multilateral platforms, and he has been trying to build that consensus. The world, in a way, also looks towards India to solve some of the very vexed issues right now, some of the vexed issues like wars that the world is facing. You think that India can bring in its diplomatic, cultural heft into play to find solutions to them?
Like I mentioned, the Global South looks to India's leadership because they trust India's leadership. I mentioned about geopolitics and problems the world is facing, particularly in terms of war, and the effect that has throughout the world. If any country can sort it out, it is India. If any person that can sort out the problems between Russia and Ukraine, it is Prime Minister Modi.
Where do you think the animal spirits are ranking right now, as far as India Inc. is concerned? With the kind of backing of policy you're seeing, what would you say?
Well, I think all the industrial players, all the corporates, I would say include the medium and small industries as well, know one thing for sure, that the consumption in this country for all the products that they're going to manufacture is only going to rise. With 1 billion people in the workforce, dependency going down, which means there are lots of more demand for services and products, you need scale. And for that, you need to invest. So on one hand, the government of India is encouraging massive investments in infrastructure, fully recognizing that every dollar that goes into infrastructure will yield $2.5, $3 in economic activity. And the private sector, led by, I would say, major industrial companies. My own company spends between 30 and 35,000 crores a year on digital infrastructure creation, whether it's laying up of fiber, putting up more towers, more radios, more satellite nodes, more submarine cables. And similarly, you're saying the cement, steel, automobiles, new industries like green hydrogen. So people are investing. I mean, large industrial houses are investing. Sometimes I think there's a kind of a feeling that the Indian incorporation or Indian industry is not spending enough to match the government's ambitions or aspirations. Occasionally, sometimes you have overcapacity created and then the prices fall. Right now, you're seeing in the steel industry, some dumping is happening from our neighboring countries. So there's a bit of a stress there. But these are cycles which are, to my mind, short in a country like India, which has massive consumption. So I remain very hopeful that you will have very strong supply side investments coming through.
So what is the next big investment leg, Mr. Mittal? Is it satellite, enabled digital push for India? Is that the next big dream for you, what you are seeing?
Well, I have been into satellite for the last now about 4.5 years. I've been studying it. I personally feel that is truly one of the now magic bullets to cover the dark areas. We still have about 2 billion people in the world who are not connected to internet. Even in the most advanced countries like US, you have something called RDOF, which was the Rural Development Opportunity Fund created by FCC of $16 billion. I was quite surprised that there are large parts of US which still do not have high-speed broadband. And you can't reach them. It's just physically very difficult. So coming back to our country, the large swaths of Rajasthan desert, it's very hard to cover it by radio telephony. Himalayas, forests, the coastline, aviation, there are areas where mobile networks will not go, leave alone fiber. For those areas, you need satellite communications. And that, to my mind, offers now a great source of new opportunities for us mobile operators or telecom operators to put that in a mix and start to cover areas which have still left behind. India provides a very high quality signal to 95% of its population. There are 5% of people who don't get internet in the country, and they live in 25% of the area of the country. So it's a very large area with a very small population. The only way to cover that is satellite.
Okay, so right now you have roti, kapda, makan, and Wi-Fi have become the needs of the people. You're saying by bringing satellite spectrum into play, you cover this for all of India. Is that the difference that we will see?
Yeah, I think this will, right now there is a ground station in Gujarat, in Mehsana, and in Pondicherry. There are 2 ground stations ready to start services. The day government gives us the permission, there will not be a single square inch of this country which will not have a radio coverage. So you just need to raise your hand and be connected.
Right. You're good at so many things, you know, acting, dancing, singing. Tell us one thing you're bad at. Is there anything? Or let's say not bad, but you are like, you think, okay, I need improvement there. Because I was just thinking about all the things that you do. And I was like, oh, she does it does everything.
See, now, if you're going to tell me something that I haven't learned, obviously, if I try it, I'll be really bad at it. One thing that I am really, really bad at would probably be coming up with an answer to that question, for starters. What am I really bad at?
It's fine if
no,
you're not bad at anything.
Now I have to
you
think
should be
about
really proud about it.
No, I have to think about it. See, I will not be able to cook anybody a 7-course meal or something like that. If somebody tells me to do that, वो नहीं हो पाएगा मुझसे. But if you tell me to eat a 7-course meal, I will ace that.
What's one thing which you love the most?
Sorry?
What one thing which you love the most?
खाने में?
हाँ. डाइट पे भी होगे और वो चीज सामने आ जाए, you'll have it.
यार खाने में एक चीज चूज करना तो बड़ा मुश्किल है. मतलब
दिल्ली का कुछ स्पेशल?
दिल्ली में तो बहुत ज़्यादा चीज़ें हैं जो बहुत स्पेशल है. The food in Delhi is known to have fabulous food.
Right.
Of course, छोले भटूरे, of course, आलू पराठे, और क्या? And what else would I say? काली दाल, पनीर मखनी.
All of that. All of us are also fan of her accents that she pulls off. Amazing. How many times have you been asked to do those accents? Because I'm going to ask you after this.
I'm very surprised. Actually, a lot of people are very interested and they think I'm doing a great job with my accents. But I'm sure that if you get an American, someone from the UK and someone from France to assess my accents, they'll just be like, गलत है ये. But मतलब बचपन में time pass करती थी in front of the mirror.
हम तो मजे में कर रहे हैं. So please, if you can demonstrate like 2 or 3 for us.
What would you like me to say?
You want to start with British or American accent?
और English में कुछ बोलूँ?
हाँ. We just want to have like 2-3 accents.
2-3 accents. अच्छा. Okay. So, everyone's had a really good lunch today, it seems. I think all of you have had a good time, isn't it? Okay. They're like, yeah, we even had some chai without you, Shraddha.
Chai tea, is it?
Chai tea.
Okay, well, what's next? What after this? Any other accent? I think you do French really well.
French also, Asha. I think it's, I try to do a French accent. I don't know how good it is, but, I try to do it. But I don't know. Do you think it is okay? It's nice to be in Delhi, but when do you think it will stop raining? I don't know. It's just raining in Bombay and it's October and I don't...
Give it up for Shraddha Kapoor. Before I ask my next question, I'll quickly have one question from the audience, and there are so many hands, and I am not going to choose it. Show your best smile, and Shraddha Kapoor will choose you. Raise your hand.
Everyone is smiling, which is such a nice feeling.
Please, one question from here. Yes.
हेलो
Hello.
कैसे हो आप
मैं एकदम मस्त हूँ हमेशा मस्त हूँ आप कैसे हो
मैं भी बहुत अच्छी हूँ आई एम योर बिगेस्ट फैन
Thank you so much.
वन थिंग माय मम्मा लव्स योर छम छम सॉन्ग
Okay. Thank you.
That's very sweet. Do you have a question, ma'am?
ये
You have a question?
वन थिंग आपके भी आधार कार्ड पे वैसी वाली फोटोज होती है आपकी बहुत अच्छी फोटो है
यार मैं नहीं दिखा सकती आधार वाली फोटो किसी को नहीं दिखा सकती बिल्कुल नहीं आप देखोगे तो आपको मतलब आप बोलोगे कि ठीक है मतलब दिखाना नहीं चाहिए था मैंने इन पर्सन देख लिया आमने सामने देख लिया तो आई थिंक ये सही है इतना सही
लेट्स मीट आफ्टर दिस वी विल मीट
आफ्टर दिस यू वांट टू सी माय फोटो आधार कार्ड फोटो I can't show you but
no
we'll meet but I'll not show you the photo
yeah sure thank you
ma'am you have a question yeah
हाँ श्रद्धा जी मैली और बहुत ही जैसे भाई ने कहा था कि आपकी वो फिल्म थी कि तेरी गलियाँ जिस तरीके से बहुत ही एक तरीके से जो यूथ है वो ज़्यादातर बहुत अटैच हो जाता है क्योंकि हर एक इंसान जब सोचता है कि हर एक एक्टर में होता है कि उसकी स्माइल बहुत अच्छी है वो जब एक तरीके से डांस करती है लेकिन आपके अंदर ही जब आप रोते हैं ना और
तो आपको अच्छा लगता है
वो रोना जो आपका वो ऐसा रियल वाला रोना है एक बार क्लैप कर दे एक बार ज़रा तो वो जो रोने की जो आपने ये जो ये स्माइल है ये बहुत ही बेहतरीन वाली जो जिसे
जब आप रोती है ना मुझे क्लैप करने का मन करता है
तो बस ये मैं कहना चाहता हूँ कि ये क्या नेचुरली होता है या आप बिल्कुल इस सच में
बहुत दर्द भरा है मुझ में
आप ग्लिसरीन यूज करती हैं नहीं
मैं मजाक कर रही हूँ
That's essentially the
But
question.
I mean, no, honestly, it's my job. It's a part of my job. So, जो भी सीन होता है, if you have to cry, उसमें हंसना होता है या रोना होता है, वो करना पड़ता है. तो it's a part of my job.
बहुत ही अच्छा. हमेशा
Thank you.
आपके ऐसे मूवी बनते रहे और हम देखते रहे. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Shraddha. I'm Dr. Adrita. The reason I can get to ask you a question because I'm a dentist and I'm a smile designer. So, like you were saying, you were looking at the smiles. So my question to you is...
So then you can also judge my smile, right?
Absolutely. Lovely it is.
How much would you rate it?
9 on 10 maybe.
Oh God, why did you put one mark, ma'am?
So I have to work on that one. What is the one?
Being a dentist, I'll have to look at your internal oral cavity properly.